Evening all, welcome back to Dust, and I guess we're going to continue a little bit of analysis from last time. So we're talking about Dust just generally, holistically. That's a good word for you. If you ever want to sound like you know businessy words, use the word holistic to describe everything. So I think holistically, see what I did? Let's have a look at Dust and really understand maybe what actually they were trying to do with this game. Now, yeah, again, Dust is an interesting kind of game because I think it's obviously done relatively well. I know people will laugh at that, but when you think about it, Elite only has 7,000 players of that game at the moment. Yes, it's only a beta, blah blah blah, but that probably will go up, and I think Elite will become a very big game. Space Engineers, I think, has only got something like 50,000-60,000 people playing it, and so on. So, Dust, okay, as a free-to-play game, should have always had more players, but I mean, when you kind of break it down, Dust 514 is actually quite an interesting game in terms of the way that they've tried to create it. It has, I think, again, this is only my opinion, in my honest opinion, I think the shooting mechanics are pretty, pretty shaky. I think they're okay, they're fun, but I think that's kind of the point. They've not tried to make a DayZ style realistic shooter here, and nor should they, because that's not really what people would want. But I think when you kind of look at the I guess the accolades that should be laid upon it, the range of weaponry and the range of suits, the range of modules, etc., was excellent. And I think one of the things that kind of dismays me slightly is that they actually did simplify much of what we have now. So if you think of all the vehicle modules that used to be, if you think of all the suit modules, less so, because I don't think they've dropped a lot of them out. But either way, they did have an awful lot of very, very interesting guns, and they're just adding to that, which is great news. I think just generally everything was always quite varied, so I think that was a real plus. And I think there's no game out there that has that customizable fit loadout like Dust does. Weirdly enough, Titanfall and Battlefield 4 try to emulate this somewhat by having kits and things like that, but the reality is they're not even as close as what EVE have done or CCP have done with Dust, because this game gave you that that kind of a real ability to have two scout suits, and one would be a tanker with huge hit points and damage, the other could be a cloak scout, etc. They're both the same suit, but yet they could use them a million different ways. And I almost think that's a missed opportunity for them, because they could have led with the marketing tagline millions of fits. So you think Borderlands 2 and Borderlands sold their entire freaking game on the fact that they had millions of fits, millions of guns, sorry, millions of procedurally generated guns. Well, Dust could have gone one better and said, we are the FPS that has millions of fits, millions of loadouts, billions of loadouts. And I think that would have been, people would have loved that, because there is something incredibly interesting about that kind of capability within a game, is the ability just to have any kind of fit you want. And I think they never traded on that. They never got that. So that's point number one. Point number two, I think, is, well, when you look at what Dust really can do, this kind of ability to mix up vehicles, mix up like aerial vehicles, tanks, that whole thing, that was also good as well. But again, I can't quite understand why they removed certain vehicles as well. It could be that there was just no ability to fix them, because if you remember the Logi LAVs, they were kind of broken. But I think this is where I think they needed to maybe be a bit more bold. Whenever you remove content from a game, you've got to have a bloody good reason as to why. So why did they remove the Enforcer tanks? Well, I kind of accept that tanks needed a bit of love. I get that, but they could have left them in, but just reduced the price on them. So you could always feel that there was this tier 1, tier 2 style tanking capability. And I think if they'd have left that in, that would have been excellent. The other one is the Logi dropship. I honestly don't know why they removed that. I thought they were actually really good. The ability to have a dropship that's almost impossible to be shot down unless you have a coordinated attempt to do it, I thought was excellent. I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and I actually cannot believe they removed that dropship at all. I thought that just made perfect sense. So I think with the vehicles, that's where, again, I think that was the part of the game that was most hit, because it didn't really make sense why they got rid of it. It was just, I guess, a bit the difficulty is that when you have OP players who know the game, who are really good at it, they will come up with certain fits, as again using that billions of fits regime, and they'll then come up with fits that actually are unkillable by new players. And I think that was maybe why the game maybe had issues. So let's talk about matchmaking. Matchmaking, I think, was the biggest problem of the whole piece, because they couldn't separate players efficiently and properly, so that some dude coming out of the academy doesn't get stomped by someone like me. And I think that was a bad thing. That was almost maybe the #1 critical action they should have fixed, that maybe would have kept this game with, you know, many more thousands of players than it does and did. And I think an easy fix for that would have been just the tiers of the suits, or quite honestly just the skill point band. So as soon as you know you're getting to a certain skill point level, so, you know, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 70 to 80, that's it. And then that's your band. And I know some people will be screwed over by that, but it means you'll have a second character. It means you'll start another account. It will mean that the game then increases as well. So this is all of the stuff that I just think they should have done. I know this is very anti-CCP. This is not what they do. But I think that was a mistake. I do honestly believe that they could have made this so much better than it was by just simply having a different way of looking at it, a different sort of style of matchmaking, and a different approach to matchmaking generally. And I think that would have been quite awesome. But there we go. I don't think there's much more you can do with that whole piece. I think there's very little now that is a kind of left to do. I think this is almost too late. The horse is bolted, so it's too late. So taking these things, these are kind of the positives and negatives of this game Dust that we all play. The reality is that there's still an incredibly fun game here. Now, I don't know what's going to happen to this game. I have no idea. I really would love to hope that CCP and the CPM and all of those people are really working hard to help this game continue, because my biggest fear is that there's going to be too much focused on Legion. So they're just going to say, we give up. Dust didn't work. We're giving up. We're just going to focus on Legion now, which is kind of what they did at FanFest, and it was a bad move, because there are still many people who play this game daily and get fun from it. So I think they feel betrayed, and rightfully so. Now, we've spoken about that many times, so I'm not going to talk about that anymore. But the reality is that there needs to be more of a commitment over what they plan to do with Dust. To be honest, leaving it switched on, if they can make it a cost neutral or even a slight profit center, then fair enough, leave it switched on, because there will probably always be a large group of people who will play this game and they'll have fun doing it. And I think if you can do that, then, you know, then that's half the battle won pretty much. I don't know. Let's see, and let's hope that they do this. I really would suspect there's going to be always a bit of a challenge to keep certain products going, because they do, I think, become staid, and I think people would just be a little bit negative to that. But I think until we hear more from Legion, until we see more from Legion, until we hear maybe that it's happening, because at the moment, as of what is it now, the end of August, the reality is that it's not happening. You know, they're working on it. Yes, there's quite a lot of people working on it, so I hear. But I think the reality is that there's not actually anything that we can tangibly see and understand. Okay, let me just cite a reference to Duke Nukem. There you go. Do you get what I mean by that? Duke Nukem was a game, obviously, from the 90s. That was it 90s? I guess it was the early noughties, and it was a pretty funny kind of pixelated FPS adventure game that obviously was filled with rather crass and crude bollocks, and it was a funny game. Yeah, I quite enjoyed it. It made me smile. And then what they said maybe in 2007, 2008 was, we're going to do a sequel, and the whole of the gaming community rose up to celebrate this momentous occasion. And then 2008 came, and they said, we're working on it, it's looking good, no screenshots. 2009 came, a little bit of a screenshot, maybe the odd thing here, the odd thing there, but again, nothing really. Maybe a bit of voice acting was being done, but again, nothing really kind of being shown. 2009 came, and then the jokes began. Oh yeah, well, this is the longest ever game, which is never going to happen, that will happen. And eventually it became such a meme, the whole Duke Nukem thing, that basically people laughed at the fact that this game would ever be produced. And then, lo and behold, they produced it. Maybe because they were worried that they're having the piss taken out of them quite a bit. So all of a sudden, Duke Nukem 3D, I think it was, came onto the market. It was a huge bash. Here we go, Duke Nukem 3D. And it was an absolute steaming pile of horse piss. And I mean, it was literally, I would rather have eye surgery while awake than play that game. That's how bad it was. And and to be honest, it was just the biggest balls up by that gaming company I think I've ever seen, ever. ever. And I think that reality is that that's where I think Legion is now. Legion is getting to the point where it's becoming a bit of a meme, a bit of a joke, a bit of a laugh. You know, Legion, lol, will it ever happen? Will it be greenlit, lol? And I think, to be honest, the longer that CCP continue this charade of, you know, not telling anybody, keeping it all quiet, not really talking about it, no screenshots, no hype at all. Because again, they're not hyping it at all, because I fear that they might get cancelled. It might be cancelled any moment. And I think this is the irony of the situation, is that it could never happen. And it is becoming, Legion is becoming Duke Nukem 3D, the next saga of that whole meme. And I think, quite frankly, they've got to do something very soon, because right now it's just coming across as a great big joke. Now you watch, as I release this video, probably a great big announcement's been done, a trailer video's been released, and you know, everything will be absolutely in place. They'll be like, you know, communicated with Rouge, and the whole team will be talking, and there'll be websites dedicated to this already by the time this video's out, and I'll be laughed at. And I don't mind, because if that's the case, great. But if it's not the case, by the time this video is out, so whatever day it is today that you're watching this video, if you go online and you can't still find anything about Legion, there's no news, no comms, nothing, then I rest my case. So there we go. I mean, I kind of do that as a bit of a poke at CCP as well, because I think there's only so much that this community will put up with. Destiny is almost out. That is going to take a lot of people away from Dust for quite some time, maybe even forever. And I think the reality is that there is always going to be that challenge of keeping people playing this game. And I think unless CCP start to really get their marketing people going on this, I think it's just going to get worse and worse. There we go. Hope you enjoyed that. See you next time.